So we collected a lot of questions ahead of time. After this, we will also have an opportunity to get questions from the crowd. So there will be someone walking around with mics. That's one.
I encourage folks to figure out how you want to be involved, like what does support look like to you, and what do the folks around you need. We host lobby days where we bring folks to Richmond and we take you to the General Assembly building to meet with your lawmakers, and we provide you with like a lot of support around that.
Okay, I think it's okay. Hi, there's a lot of you. My name is Wyatt Rolla. I use they, them pronouns. I am the senior trans rights attorney at the ACLU of Virginia. So they are now going to issue passports according to that EO, which means according to people's sex assigned at birth. As Narissa said earlier, in a lot of situations, we don't know exactly what that means yet because executive orders don't make law, right? They are directives to agencies on how to implement laws. So we need to wait to see exactly what the State Department says about, for example, how it's going to determine someone's sex. But what we do know is that they have issued a directive, the State Department, to freeze all applications that are either seeking an X gender marker or seeking to amend their gender marker. So that means if you send something into the State Department right now that tries to renew a passport and have a different gender marker on it, you are going to renew your passport, you have to submit your old passport, and they are going to keep those documents and not move forward with updating your gender marker. So right now, even with all of the unknowns, it really does not make sense if you have a current document to try to renew that document and update your sex marker, right? If you have a passport and there was a gender marker on it and you're trying to have a different one, I think it's a very high risk that they are not going to process that, and whatever documents you send in, they're just going to hold.
If it is within the power of the executive to change how funding is allocated, like federal funding, as well as what Medicaid and Medicare certification looks like. There are other places where trans healthcare is legal, but hospitals have already elected to no longer provide it because they don't want the heat, they don't want the potential lawsuit. This is a strategy that worked very effectively in limiting abortion care, even without a law.
That is the goal of the executive order, to essentially threaten these medical schools or hospitals to say, do you want money or do you want to provide care to your patients? We have been in touch with communicating out the impact of the order and what it says with doctors and other folks in leadership. Similar to how we are working to educate you all as community members, we're working to educate providers who would be impacted by that. It is the same as when we've had healthcare bans introduced in Virginia to say, keep doing your job. And for patients who are seeking care as well, to keep your appointments and keep going to them.
This is part of the reason why I think it was so important when Narissa was giving her presentation earlier to talk about our responsibility as not just folks up here, but as to everyone in this audience to share good information, like seek out good information and make sure that we're not feeding into the intentional chaos and panic that this administration is trying to create. Because exactly what the question asker had pointed out, right, that the gender affirming care for those under 19 that that dropped yesterday, it did have a provision in it that said that federal grant recipients, if they provided care that was listed in that EO, would not be eligible for those grants. But I will tell you, there will be legal challenges to whether they can stop grants midstream. We also have the wildness that happened yesterday when we paused like every kind of federal funding.
There's a coordinated group of 100 community health centers that are in dialogue right now about several of these issues, not only related to LGBTQ. You would be surprised the number of community health centers across the whole state even in rural areas that are serving LGBTQ and doing trans health. And so there's more support out there and organization that is happening. They're setting up a command center to start looking at how do we address some of these things. The second piece has to do with like Family Clinic, Health Brigade. We don't serve anyone under 18 because we don't have license to do that. But because we're a free clinic, we can separate our trans health services from anything having to do with Medicaid. So there's some very creative stuff that is on the table. People are working to try to make this happen. And I also want to say in terms of the hospitals, we have healthcare members on our board that are healthcare lawyers, and they are being called in to do a lot of advising to some of the hospital systems and other larger systems. And they are very much committed to the value of this.
Signing up for our newsletters is a great way to find out ways you can plug in. For instance, this week we got an order of 200 t-shirts in, and we didn't have time to fold them, so I just put the word out in our weekly news, and 6 people said, hey, we'll come do it, and they were done, and we had folks show up and they were done in an hour. So we have very small teams, and there's a lot of work to do. And if you are interested, you go to all of the tables and pick up cards and sign up for newsletters, then you will find out ways that you can contribute in a way that feels good to you.
Something I would recommend is thinking about where you spend most of your time and think about whether those are trans affirming spaces and how you can be a part of making them trans affirming. So does your workplace have trans affirming policies? If not, how can you organize with your coworkers to make some? At your local school board, a lot of stuff in Virginia that affects trans students is actually decided locally at the school board level. Like in Richmond, we have trans affirming policies in place because of the school board here, and because people are putting pressure on them and showing up to school board meetings and making it known to them that we care about this, so we're not going to let it off the hook. But in Chesterfield, we just saw a couple months ago, they changed their policies to be more trans restrictive and not as trans friendly. So just think about are you involved in your local school board? Are you involved in those kind of local things? So where you already at, and get plugged in there and kind of deepen your connections there.
But what I have found is a lot of people simply do not know their rights. And so vote up on your rights as a citizen, as an LGBTQ plus person, as a person with other identities, where we know these things are overlapping, because if you're not able to take care of yourself in this process, then you're not really able to help take care of those around you that really need you. And this is a time where, as I said to our staff, we really need to be loving on each other.
I don't know if this is a bit premature, but I'm just wondering, in terms of like the hospital systems and gender affirming care, and all the lawyers whispering in the CEO's ears, whether you have thoughts on whether it be more effective to blow up their spot in advance and be making a lot of noise in advance to be putting pressure now, or whether it's better to just let it be and not blow up their spot.
They are working on it behind the scenes. I know that the legal teams in these big institutions are digesting it, trying to figure out what the best path forward is. So I'm nervous because our providers are our friends and we want to protect them, right? We want them to if there's too much heat, this is just my personal opinion, if there's too much heat before anything happens, before they make any decisions, then it might make their higher up folks go, oh, this is too hard, we're going to pull the plug now. That's just my personal opinion and kind of our style. I think she's going to need to advocate behind the scenes. And
we're in touch with Kane and Warner and some of these folks right now. There's so much focus right now on the immigrant community and the safety of the immigrant community. But we've fought these battles many times, particularly for trans folks in the past across the state, at trying to make sure that they got the care that they needed. That I do feel like, and I think Senator Kane's going to be coming to Health Brigade, I think next week. We're trying to get this set up to actually talk with people about their health care and what they're experiencing. And so, once we get that out, we will put something out about that because he wants to hear from people exactly like what she said had to do with not showing up for appointments because of fear or they're getting canceled or whatever. That's exactly the kind of information that I know he's looking for.
I was kind of thinking specifically about like hospital systems or something like that. What I would say is that good organizing takes time, and it's good to be like to have done all the groundwork before launching some sort of like actual campaign publicly.
It says, how can we or should we prepare for our trans youth to lose access to gender-affirming care? Some examples for stop finding hormones or making travel plans. So, yeah, if y'all can speak to that.
Yeah. Well, what I would say is definitely fight now. That's not, I think prepare to me is a little fatalistic. Virginia right now, we do have the, like, trans kids have the right to access gender-affirming care. And that's not a right that I think that they should lose quietly. And they're willing to fight, but they need other people that are going to stand up with them. It can't just be trans people. It needs to be cisgender people who are 99% of the population need to speak up a little bit on this issue. At Side by Side, so we have support groups every night. We have, basically we are a community for trans youth in Richmond, and they're all like very scared right now of losing their care, and very anxious, but they're also like each other's own support and like their own support system where they find their community, because at their school they're like the only person who's trans, or like they don't have family that supports them or something like that, and they can come be in community and stuff like that. So what I would say first is like support places that are supporting community for trans youth. There's a statistic that says that even one affirming adult in a trans kid's life reduces the risk of suicidality and depression by 50%, just one person. So you could be that person in a trans kid's life. It doesn't need to be their parent, it doesn't need to be their teacher. It can be you in their life. So I would